Hello, I'm William Michael of the Classical Liberal Arts Academy, and tonight I want to talk about an important topic that I think will be, I think it'll resonate with many Catholic parents, and I think it will help us to actually solve a problem that many of us face. I know I certainly face it as a father, and I know in dealing with other Catholic families, I know that other Catholic families are dealing with it as well. And I've been frustrated by this for some time. I've been sort of just thinking on it and kind of turning it over in my own mind, because it's been a source of frustration for me and uncertainty. And then this evening, I was working on some grading, just grading student assignments, and I decided to put a movie on in the background to keep me some company while I was working. And I found a video of St. John of the Cross, and I thought, oh, that'd be nice. I'd like to think about St. John a little bit, one of my favorite saints. And so I put on this video of the life of St. John of the Cross, and it's actually been a while since I've watched a saint movie, a saint biography, and it was going through his childhood, and as he's coming up as a child, it's talking about how there was great grace in his life and how he was growing and he was studying and learning and doing all these good things, and finally decided that he wanted to be a Carmelite and all this, and it's just this wonderful story of this saintly soul growing up and going through life. And as I was listening to this in the background, I just stopped myself and I started paying attention, and I thought, this is what's wrong with Catholicism. This is what's wrong with Catholicism. What's wrong is that we spend time reading saint biographies, we spend time watching movies about saints, learning stories about saints. We spend all of this time thinking about saints, studying saints, talking about saints, but we're in roles in society where we're parents. We're responsible for raising children. We're teachers. We're responsible for teaching students. And the problem is that saints really don't need parents. Saints really don't need teachers, because saints are filled with grace. They make good decisions. They desire good things. I know because I've had some students who certainly are saintly, and I know what it's like. They're what we call low maintenance students. I know what kids like that are like. They're kids where if you leave them free to themselves, they'll be out sitting under a tree saying prayers or reading a spiritual book or working on their studies and so on. They hardly need any supervision because the fear of God or the love of God directs their behavior. They really don't need parents. They really don't need teachers. And this is the problem with Catholicism. So much time is spent talking about saints, thinking about saints, reading about saints, watching movies about saints, and so on. And none of the lives of saints, none of their lives teach us how to actually care for the kids that we have, the students that we have, who are not saints. The problem is that 99.9% of the people that we have to deal with, they're not saints. So it doesn't matter what St. John of the Cross was like as a student. You're not going to have students like that. It doesn't matter what St. Catherine of Siena was like as a child. You're not going to have children like St. Catherine of Siena. And this is the problem. We learn about their lives. We learn what it was like to be the mother of St. Bernadette. We learn what it was like to be the mother and father of Padre Pio. But we don't learn how to be the mother or father of all the other kids. We don't learn how to be the teachers of all the other kids. And that's what our actual work consists of. My kids, I've got to deal with kids who really, don't share many of my spiritual or philosophical interests. I have good kids, they're virtuous kids, but the things in me that grace has led me to be interested in and desirous of, um, my kids don't all share those same desires, just like um, the brothers of St. John Bosco, his brothers didn't share his desires. Um, we look at the lives of the saints, and they were extraordinary individuals. Holy people, virtuous people, are usually extraordinary, and it's usually attributed to unique graces in their lives that cause them to be so. Virtuous parents often have one good child and four bad children. That's common all throughout history. That's one of the reasons why the early Americans argued against monarchy, is because they said so few kings have good children. They don't want power passing down from a father to the son, because that's the cause of all the trouble that kingdoms get into. And we all know this. We all know that lives of the saints, like I said, you've got a saint and he's got two bad brothers or two bad sisters. He's got a father who's a bad guy and his mother is good. There's just not this correlation between good parents, good children. And so we're often dealt with, or we're often left, I should say, with this challenge of learning how to teach students who don't study, students who don't like to read, students who don't like to memorize, students who would rather be playing video games, students who would rather be playing outside or doing something else. Those are the students that we often have to teach. And our children, it's the same thing. We have to lead and manage children in our families who are not excited about religion, who are not excited about philosophical studies or heavenly things. And that's the challenge of the Catholic life. And much of the resources, or most of the resources that we watch and study and think about, they don't talk about the kids and the students that we have to actually deal with. And it just really dawned on me tonight as I was watching the life of St. John of the Cross that I really don't care about St. John of the Cross as a boy, because none of my students are like St. John of the Cross. It's not going to help me to learn what St. John of the Cross was like as a student. I need to learn what all the other kids were like as students. I need to learn how the saints taught all of the kids who weren't like the saints. I need to know how the devout parents parented all of the kids who were not saintly children. That's the challenge in the Catholic life. And we don't get much instruction in these things. We don't get much instruction about how to teach the kids who don't want to study. We don't get much instruction about how to parent the kids who don't want to follow the advice of Christian parents. And that's the frustration that I think we often have to deal with, just because it's the challenge of Christian parenting. It's the challenge of Christian teaching. But having all these stories of saints in our heads, and saintly children like Aloysius Gonzaga and Dominic Savio and Saint Rose of Lima, and it goes on and on and on. They really don't help us with the work of parenting and teaching. So I spent the night talking to my wife about this and thinking about it, and I was thinking, like, we really don't gear Christian activities towards the children who need them. We almost organize them waiting for saints to show up and make effective use of them, and the saints are not going to show up. They're going to show up once in a while. Like I said, I've had saintly students. I know what they're like. I know what it's like to live with them. I know what it's like to talk to them. I know what it's like to teach them. I know what it's like to grade their work. They really don't need much help. They simply, usually they're looking for some fellowship from a teacher or a tutor. They really don't need much assistance. They just need time to get through the work. It's the other kids that are actually the challenge for the teacher and for the parent. So I was just thinking tonight about Classical Liberal Arts Academy and what we do and how it works. And as I was thinking about it, I was thinking to myself, and I said, I really think that I have designed the Classical Liberal Arts Academy to be a program that I would enjoy, that I would love to study in. And I do love to study in it. I use it for my own studies. That's part of how I make decisions about what courses to offer and what resources to use. I choose resources that I like to study. But as I was thinking about it, and this isn't to boast, this is just being really honest. I'm an extraordinary student. I've always been an extraordinary student. I was an extraordinary college student. I love to study. I like to work hard. I like to read. I like to take notes. I like to memorize. I like to write. I like to rewrite. I love studying. And the Classical Liberal Arts Academy, if a student is like me, it's like paradise. But the problem is that most students are not like me. Most students don't like to study. They don't like to read. They don't like to write, and so on. And so I was talking with my wife and thinking about even my own sons, because my own sons, they're military minded. And for some reason, in God's providence, I was given a bunch of wannabe Army Rangers and Navy SEALs. They're wonderful. I admire them for their virtue, their training and their discipline. But, I am more of a philosopher. I love religion and philosophy. And so I don't share those interests of theirs. I support them. I'm proud of them. But I don't share those interests. Not something that I want to talk about. I really don't want to get into the details of what they're thinking about or doing. But it's just not my thing. And I understand that my thing is not going to be their thing. And that's okay, because we have different vocations, and it's very clear that my vocation and their vocation are very different. But I spent tonight thinking about, my sons and some other problems in students that we deal with, and other parents who write to us and talk to us about problems they're having in parenting and things like that. And I realized that we need to spend more effort, and when I say we, I mean the Classical Liberal Arts Academy. We need to spend more effort making our program effective and helpful for the students who don't want to study, for the students who don't want to read, who don't want to write and rewrite and memorize and so on, because they still need a basic education. They still need to complete courses and fill out transcripts and earn diplomas and so on. And I don't want to have this situation where we neglect those kids, because they're good kids. They just have different vocations, different needs, different interests. And they don't necessarily need to study for mastery like more devout kids will want to. They need to get their studies done, and we need to challenge them as much as we can and present activities to them that they'll actually engage in and work to complete and learn from. And in my experience, when I look at all the courses we offer, and I look at what are the most popular courses, what courses do kids seem to enjoy studying, which courses do kids seem to make the most progress in, and so on, it's always courses that are exam-based, quiz and exam-based. And the exams can be very difficult. They can be challenging, searching exams. But courses that have exams, I find that kids work really hard on those courses. They work really hard on those exams. They study, they take the exams, they review the lessons, they retake the exams, and they continue studying and working to pass the quizzes and raise their scores and so on. And while I don't think that's the best way to study, I really like to have kids do comprehension questions and submit written responses to questions and outlines and things like that. I think for the 90%, that really is the best way to conduct these courses. And so what I'm going to be working on, I'm going to start it tonight actually, I already have started it, is I'm going to make sure that all of our courses are designed in a way that those other students, the 90%, the students who are not great students, have exams to complete courses to work on and get credit for courses through examinations. So for every course that would likely go on a high school transcript, I'm going to create a midterm exam at about the halfway point of the content of the course that they would need to complete. And I'm going to complete a final exam. And if students pass those midterm and final exams with 90% scores or higher, they're going to get a certificate for those courses, a certificate of completion, because they've passed the midterm and the final for those courses. And that will be beneficial for the good students who do the other work and develop mastery of their lessons. I can create an honor certificate for the kids who do all those assignments. That can be something separate. But all the students, both the great students and the not so great students, I think they'll all benefit from simple exam-based course certificates that require the completion of a midterm examination and a final examination. Because like I said, we can't just cater things for the saints. We can't just cater things for the good kids. We've got to also think about the other kids and ask, what can we do for those kids to help them study as much as possible, to present content in a way that they can engage with it, they're motivated to work on it, and so on. And my experience has shown me that that way is through examinations. So, rather than in a modern high school course, we might say, well, you've got to sit in a chair for 120 hours a year in this subject and in that subject. That's the kind of stuff that really plagues active kids. We've got this dilemma in modern schools talking about attention deficit disorder, like it's some kind of disease. When we're asking kids to sit in these boring classrooms, listen to these boring teachers, and do so for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours. And if they don't do it, if they can't do it or they don't want to do it, we tell them they have a disorder, which I think is actually disordered itself, that whole idea. So I want to create exam-based courses where if you pass the exams, and when I say pass, I mean 90% or higher, no 50% nonsense. 90% or higher, and you can take those quizzes as many times as you want, exams I should say, you get credit for those courses and you get certificates for those courses. I think that'll be good for the kids who are willing to work and study when there's a test to fight through and complete, when they can see the finish line, but who are not going to sit there through hundreds and hundreds of hours of boring activities, being told that if they continue down the road, months and months from now, they'll be done. I don't think most kids are motivated to do that. So what students are going to begin seeing are midterm and final examinations for all courses that we would intend to be included on high school transcripts. And when students see those exams, they can study and take those exams and review and retake those exams. And when they score 90%, it'll automatically be marked as passed. And when they pass both of those exams, they'll get their certificate for those courses. They're not going to be easy tests, but I've found that in my experience, when I give the kids exams, even the kids who don't like to study, they'll work hard and pass really difficult exams that really challenge them in their knowledge of the content. It's really the format of the lesson and the means of promotion that's more important, because they're willing to study, they're willing to work hard for an exam, but not so much for other assignments. So I'm going to try to be more thoughtful about the kids who need help. And again, I've been moved to this by thinking about some of my boys and just how I can get them to study as much as possible, considering the differences in their personalities. And like I said, my experience has shown me that these kids are willing to work hard to pass an exam or to get through a quiz, but it's some of the other assignments that just really disinterest them, and some of the time-based requirements that just are really difficult for them to bear with because they're active and they want to do stuff, and It's very hard to think about having 120 hours in a subject rather than just saying, hey, work really hard, study, and pass this test, and you're done. I know for me, I'd be motivated to work like that, and I think a lot of these kids are, especially boys. I think they'd be motivated like that too. So keep an eye out for these midterm and final examinations and certificates that are attached to them. I think it's going to help lots of kids and help us to remember that we're not responsible for educating saints. It's all the other kids that we have to teach and parent every day. And we've got to think about what the best way is to teach them and help them to study and learn and complete their required studies, because asking them all to act like saints or all to study like honor students really doesn't make much sense, and we need to stop doing that. So hopefully we can fix this. God bless.